Hey everybody, this is Dr. Jeff from debtfreedr.com. Let me ask you a question. How much money is enough? It may not be as much as you think. What about you? Have you ever thought about your quote magic number? It's funny in that most of us have at some point in our life, but really don't remember how we came up with it. Let's dive a little bit deeper and try to find out how much money is enough for you. Now, we all know that having tons of money isn't going to make us any happier. But if I were to choose between lack of or abundance, I think I'd choose the latter. But what do other people say? So, according to research, if you asked a recently trained doctor about what their magic number is, their answer is going to be more on the high side, anywhere from 12, 15, 20 million bucks. Now, I don't know about you, but trying to save that amount of money after starting practice late in the game and having typically a high student loan bill, it's going to be very tough. But if you ask somebody closer to retirement, let's say in their 60s, they would usually stick closer to maybe like a $5 to $6 million range. Yes, it's doable, but not probable. Now, I had a number in mind when I first started practicing, and I can't remember how I came up with it either. Some people recall maybe a conversation that they had with a financial advisor, while others may state that that's something that maybe they read about in an article. Look, I'm all about setting goals, both personal and financial. But the problem is when these goals are set that are not well defined and have a clear roadmap on how to obtain them. Let's take losing weight for an example. Most that set these weight loss goals, they don't reach them usually because they don't have a specific plan on how to achieve them. Yes, exercising and eating right, that's all important, but specifically what types of exercises and foods need to be eaten. It's got to be precise work. So, unfortunately for us, high income paid doctors, we start behind the eight ball after our training is completed with usually a six-figure student loan debt. So, because of this, accumulating and coming up with this 12 million bucks that they're talking about during our working careers is going to be very tough. And that's a problem. That's actually a very significant problem. So, what can you do? So the uncertainty that the traditional financial planning model creates is the very reason that most doctors work much longer than necessary. Sometimes working even while suffering from physical pain, because in the back of their mind, they really don't know how much is enough for them to quit working. Recently, I read about a dentist who was actually in his mid 30s. He'd started a practice from scratch. He was collecting almost 2 million bucks a year within the first 4 years of starting it, which is as you probably know, is very impressive. But unfortunately, he stated that even though he'd achieved this success in such a short time frame, it was already beginning to take a mental and physical toll on him. He was already having thoughts of selling his practice well before the age of 40. So the problem that this dentist was facing is really not uncommon. Most don't know how to create cash flow income from investment assets. He only knows how to generate revenue from his hands, from actively working, like most of us do. Focusing on this active earned income is what he was doing instead of focusing on passive income. Now, this dentist is a perfect example of somebody that should actually start with the end in mind. Now, I'll never forget when my cousin, who's actually an attorney that retired, he retired probably in his mid 40s. He came over when I first started practicing. And his first recommendation to me, he said, Jeff, look, I want you to develop an exit strategy and start with the end in mind. Now, I'll admit back then when I was a green 31-year-old, I thought he was nuts. Exit strategy. I was barely into the first couple months of treating patients, and here's this guy telling me talking about exiting. I mean, what did he know? Well, he knew that like what other people tell us that are very successful, that we should reverse engineer our situation, no matter what stage of practice that we're in. So, by that, I mean, let's take your monthly income and figure out how much in capital assets, such as passive real estate investments, that's needed to simply replace it. So let's run a few numbers and see if we can get you to realize that your quote magic number might not have to be so large after all. So instead of that initial $12 million number that we discussed, let's take a look at what having only, let's say, $3 million instead of the 12, $3 million in assets paying out passive income, such as real estate could produce. So at a conservative 7% cash flow rate a year, $3 million dollars would produce $210,000 a year or $17,500 a month, virtually tax free. Well, how's that, you might ask? Well, actually, the benefits that you'll get from depreciation in real estate will offset most of this monthly income. So you got to think about that when you're investing in these things. The tax benefits are huge. Question: could you live off of 17 grand a month tax free? I bet I know the answer. So, if you had a mutual fund or mutual funds that were worth the same 3 million bucks, every time you take a distribution out, you'd have to pay taxes on. Also, depending on what the stock market is doing that year when you're taking money out, you may start to deplete down that principal. But this isn't the case with passive real estate investments. So your original $3 million investment would continue to grow and appreciate even while you're still getting these tax free distributions. So at the end of a typical, let's say, 5 or 6 year hold period that most of these assets are held for, that $3 million would be worth much, much more. So, do I have your attention now? So, if you're ready to start building wealth, I'm talking about real wealth, then go to debtfreedr.com/free guide and download an ebook that I put together for you all about how I've began to create passive income. So thanks for joining me today, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.